Most of what we call healthy eating today is built on advice that changes every 5 years. But there are 3 quiet practices that have not changed in centuries. They are not new, they are not branded, they are not on the front of any magazine. And underneath them sits something rare in nutrition, a stack of clinical research on fermented foods and gut health that actually agrees with itself. By the end of this video, you will see why fermented food, organic food, and seasonal eating are not 3 separate health trends. They are one principle, told 3 different ways. Welcome to Good Gut Feeling. I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for honest food, slow learning, and the quiet science that ties them together. I have spent years reading the research and making the food, and the further I went, the more one pattern kept showing up. The studies that hold up over time, the ones that get repeated by independent labs, keep pointing at the same 3 things: fermentation, organic growing, seasonal eating. By the end of this episode, you will have a clear picture of what each one actually does for your body, and what each one actually does for the soil and the air around us. We will look at human trial data on the gut microbiome. We will look at meta-analyses on organic produce. We will look at carbon and nutrient research on seasonal local food. Stay with me, because once you see the pattern, the noise around food gets a lot quieter. In 2021, the Sonnenberg lab at Stanford published a clinical trial in the journal Cell. They put 36 healthy adults on one of 2 diets for 10 weeks. One group ate a high-fiber diet. The other group ate a diet rich in fermented food: yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, fermented vegetables, kombucha. The fermented food group did something the fiber group did not. Their gut microbial diversity increased measurably. 19 different inflammatory markers went down. That is not a small finding. That is a randomized trial showing that simply adding fermented foods to a normal diet shifts both the microbiome and the immune system in the same direction. Long before that trial, the Nurses' Health Study and the EPIC cohort had already shown that people who regularly ate fermented dairy tended to have lower rates of weight gain, lower markers of insulin resistance, and lower cardiovascular risk. Those are observational studies, so they cannot prove cause. But when randomized data and observational data point in the same direction, the picture gets sturdy. Think of your gut as a garden. A garden does not get healthier because you take a vitamin. A garden gets healthier because the soil gets richer and the variety of plants increases. That is what fermented food does. It carries living microbes. It carries the metabolites those microbes have already produced. It carries acids and enzymes that signal to your own gut lining. More variety, more signals, more resilience. The mechanism, as far as the research has worked it out, comes down to short-chain fatty acids. When microbes ferment fiber and certain compounds in your colon, they produce molecules called butyrate, propionate, and acetate. Butyrate, especially, is the preferred fuel of the cells lining your large intestine. A well-fed gut lining is a tighter gut lining. A tighter gut lining means fewer inflammatory signals slipping into the bloodstream. This is one of the cleaner stories in modern nutrition science. Fiber and fermented food feed the microbes. The microbes produce short-chain fatty acids. The short-chain fatty acids quietly lower inflammation almost everywhere they reach. That is the loop, and it is one of the few loops where almost every research group keeps finding the same answer. And this part matters. A lot of supermarket products say fermented on the front and then quietly tell you they have been heated to extend shelf life. Heat destroys live cultures. Flavor can survive that. Living microbes cannot. So look for products kept cold. Look for short ingredient lists. Or, the most reliable path of all, make a jar at home. That is a recipe with a microbiome attached. In 2014, a research team at Newcastle University led by Carlo Leifert, published a meta-analysis of 343 peer-reviewed studies in the British Journal of Nutrition. They compared organic crops to conventionally grown crops. Organic produce showed 19 to 69% higher concentrations of antioxidants, depending on the compound. Cadmium, a heavy metal you do not want in your body, was nearly 50% lower in organic crops. Pesticide residue was about 4 times lower. 4 times. That is not a marginal difference. A 2019 intervention study from UC Berkeley took children and adults off conventional produce and put them on a fully organic diet for 6 days. They measured pesticide breakdown products in urine. Within those 6 days, levels of organophosphates, neonicotinoids, and pyrethroids dropped sharply. 6 days. The body lowers its chemical load that quickly when the input changes. This is not only about the person eating the food. Organic farming protects soil microbes. Organic farming protects pollinators. Organic farming protects groundwater. Conventional farming was designed for yield. Organic farming was designed for continuity. Those are 2 different goals, and the soil keeps the score. There is a trial in Switzerland called the DOK trial. It has been running since 1978. That is almost 5 decades of side-by-side comparison between organic and conventional plots. On the same land, with the same weather, with the same crops. What it has found over and over is that organic plots use less energy, build more soil organic matter, and host more microbial activity in the root zone. Yields are sometimes lower in good years. But in drought years, organic plots tend to hold their ground better. The roots reach further. The soil holds water longer. That is the part the headlines often miss. Resilience is harder to photograph than yield. But over decades, resilience is what feeds you. I want to be honest with you. I do not eat 100% organic every day. Cost is real, availability is real, and I've learned to hold that with grace, not guilt. What I aim for, and what the research actually supports, is direction. The Dirty Dozen produce list, for example, gives you the items where it matters most. Strawberries, spinach, kale, apples, grapes, peaches. If you can shift those toward organic, the data says you have already done a lot. Vegetables and fruit reach their nutritional peak at the moment they are harvested. After that, vitamin C and folate begin to decline. A study from the University of California in Davis showed that spinach can lose up to 90% of its vitamin C within 7 days of harvest at room temperature. Refrigeration slows this, but it does not stop it. A tomato grown in season, picked ripe, carried a short distance, eaten within days, is not the same food as a tomato picked green. Gassed to ripen, shipped across an ocean, and held in storage for weeks. Same name, different molecule. Seasonal food also tastes different, not because of marketing, because of biology. A strawberry that ripens in real sunlight produces more anthocyanins. A carrot that grows through a cold autumn night accumulates more sugars. A leafy green harvested in spring carries more chlorophyll and more bitter compounds, which are exactly the compounds your liver uses to do its quiet work. Seasonal eating sounds abstract until you stand in front of a real harvest. In spring, that is asparagus, young leaves, peas, radishes, the first herbs. In summer, tomatoes, courgettes, berries, peaches, cucumbers, beans. In autumn, apples, pears, pumpkins, kale, root vegetables, wild mushrooms. In winter, cabbages, leeks, onions, citrus, stored apples, fermented jars from the months before. Notice that last one? Fermentation is, historically, the bridge between abundance and scarcity. Sauerkraut existed because cabbage in October had to be food in February. Kimchi existed because Korean winters needed color and probiotic warmth. Pickled fish existed because the catch in summer had to feed people in January. This is the part where the three pillars stop being separate. Seasonal eating creates surplus. Surplus needs preservation. Preservation, in real food terms, is fermentation. Now, the environmental piece, a landmark study by Christopher Weber and Scott Matthews in 2008, looked at the carbon footprint of food in the United States. They found that, for the average household, transportation was a meaningful but secondary part of the emissions story. The bigger lever was what you eat, then how it is grown, then how far it traveled, then how it was stored. What, how, where? Seasonal eating quietly improves all three. It tends to use less storage energy. It tends to use less long-haul shipping. It tends to come from smaller, more diversified farms, which usually means more biodiverse soil. Fermented food adds living microbes. Organic food removes chemical load. Seasonal food delivers nutrients at their peak. Notice that none of these three contradicts the others. None of them asks you to give up flavor. None of them asks for a complicated supplement stack. And there is one more layer. Researchers John Cryan and Ted Dinan at University College Cork have spent 2 decades mapping what they call the gut-brain axis, the vagus nerve, the microbial metabolites, the short-chain fatty acids that your gut bacteria produce when they ferment fiber for you. Their research suggests that the diversity of your gut microbes is associated with mood, sleep quality, and stress resilience. The exact mechanism is still being mapped, but the correlation has been replicated in multiple cohorts. The food on your fork is not only feeding you, it is feeding the small living community inside you that, in turn, is talking back to your brain. There's one more study I want to mention because it is often misquoted. It is called the SMILES trial, published in 2017 by Felice Jacka and her team at Deakin University in Australia. They took adults with moderate to severe depression and put them on a Mediterranean-style whole food diet, alongside their existing care. After 12 weeks, about a third of the dietary group reached remission, compared to about 8% in the control group. That is not a claim that food cures depression. That is a claim that, in the context of standard care, eating real, unprocessed, varied food appears to help, and helps measurably. The mechanism is still being studied, but it almost certainly involves the same gut, the same microbes, and the same short-chain fatty acids we just talked about. People who shift in this direction often report the same 3 things: calmer digestion, steadier energy across the day, and a slow, almost surprising drop in cravings for the loud, processed foods they used to reach for. That is not willpower. That is a microbiome that has been given something real to work with. Industrial agriculture treats soil as a substrate. Regenerative and organic agriculture treats soil as a living organism. A single teaspoon of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. Those microbes hold carbon. They cycle nitrogen. They build the structure that lets water soak in instead of running off. Studies from the Rodale Institute and from long-term European trials show that organic systems retain more soil organic carbon, support more pollinator species, and hold up better in drought years. The Rodale Farming Systems trial, running since 1981, found that healthy soils built under organic management can sequester meaningful amounts of carbon every year, just by being managed well. Cover cropping, compost, no synthetic nitrogen, crop rotation, old practices, quiet results. Local food, eaten in season, also keeps something else alive: knowledge. A farmer you can speak to is a farmer you can ask about pest pressure, weather, fertility, varieties that have been selected over generations for your specific soil. That kind of relationship cannot scale to a global supply chain, but it can scale to a community. And the research on community-supported agriculture, farmers markets, and local food networks consistently shows the same thing: more biodiversity, more soil care, more resilience under climate stress. Fermented eating builds your inner ecosystem. Organic farming protects the outer one. Seasonal eating ties them together with proximity and time. This is not 3 movements. This is 1 movement with 3 doors. When I started doing this years ago, it did not feel like science. It felt like cooking. Then, the research caught up with the kitchen. Or maybe the kitchen had been ahead the whole time. That is the part I find genuinely beautiful. Our grandparents fermented because the harvest demanded it. They ate seasonally because they had no choice. They grew food without industrial chemistry because it had not been invented yet. We are not going back. We are coming around. If you want to go deeper into the gut microbiome itself, there's a companion episode on this channel called Why Your Gut Doesn't Need More Probiotics. It walks through what these microbes actually are, and why a richer inner ecosystem matters so much for everything from mood to immunity. So that is the picture. 3 quiet practices, 1 direction. A growing pile of evidence saying the food that protects your body also tends to protect the world that grew it. You do not have to do all of it. You do not have to do it perfectly. A jar of sauerkraut in your fridge, an organic apple from a farm you can name, a meal cooked from what is in season this week. That is already enough to start. If something here gave you a clearer picture or a reason to open a jar, I would be so grateful if you liked this video and subscribed to Good Gut Feeling. This community grows 1 person at a time, and that 1 person matters. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take good care of yourself, inside and out.